What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, and this week on the How To Show, we're talking about financial independence and basically how do you get from point A to point B. There's an entire world of language that comes with terms that people don't understand, and we're going to break all that down for you. I found this graphic a couple of weeks ago, and I thought that it was really worthwhile to dive into it and do an explanation video on how you basically can get to the different levels of financial independence, what they mean, and ultimately, thank you to walletburst.com for putting this graphic together. Pretty straightforward from red to green, and that's red in the same sense that most stock tickers or financial statements are red. You want to take yourself and get yourself as far into the green as possible. And if you're in the red, you want to move yourself over so that you can get into the green at some point. And so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about each one of the steps, what might be associated with them, what they mean specifically, and ultimately get yourself in a position where you can find out where you are and find out where you're headed. And, if this is a goal for you, financial independence might be something that you're interested in. You don't want to necessarily be tied to working a specific job for a specific amount of time until it's time to retire in the traditional sense of the word with the gold watch and the 40-year career at the same company, and you retire when you're 65. If that's not really what you're into, what you're looking for, these basically milestones along the financial independence journey might be of interest to you to start poking and prodding at where you're at on them. And so the first one that you see there is negative net worth, and that is exactly what it sounds like. I did a video a little while back on how to calculate your net worth, and this basically is a scenario where your net worth is negative. And the most relatable, I feel, scenario is you've just wrapped up either high school, you've just wrapped up college, and you don't have a whole lot of possessions, you don't have anything of value to your name yet, but you have some debt. And so if you first graduate with your college degree or whatever that looks like, and let's say you've got a car that's worth $5,000, but you've got student loans worth $30,000, and those are really the only two pieces of your financial puzzle. You're plus 5, but you're down 30, and so your net is negative 25, and that's a negative net worth situation. But over time, you can start to build your income. You can start to pay down your debt. You can start to accumulate assets, and you can get yourself one step further, which would be zero net worth. And so let's play the scenario out as I described it. You've got 30 grand in student loans. Now maybe later on you've got 25 grand of student loans. But during that time, you managed to save a little bit of money, and you put some money toward a house or something like that, and you've got some sort of value that offsets that 25 grand in student loans. You've got 25 grand in assets, and so you've got a net worth of zero. This is your break-even point on life. And everything beyond this is heading in the right direction toward an opportunity where maybe you can retire before the traditional retirement age. And so the next step to that is emergency fund. It, in a general sense, is if Murphy's Law happens to you, it's not that big a deal because you've got something to cover it. I've done videos on emergency fund before. This financial experts will call that anywhere between 3, 6, and 12 months of expenses. And depending on how aggressive or how predictable your life is, you can find out where that is for you. And the same goes with your income, how predictable it is or how spontaneous it is. If you're in a position where you're high commissioned or you're exclusively commissioned, it may look a little different for you. You may want to have a bigger emergency fund. But in a general sense, I think I've read statistics that some high percentage of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency. And so you don't want to find yourself in there and hitting this next, getting yourself into the orange world and having an emergency fund so that it puts a little bit of distance between yourself and catastrophe is a good place to be. And so when you keep going forward, you hit coast fire. And so all of these items with fire at the end of them is the acronym for Financial Independence Retire Early, which is the moniker of the financial independence community. And coast fire is really the first step in that process. And what that means is you have been putting away money toward retirement, and you've been doing it, typically, religiously, frequently, in such a way that over time your retirement accounts have accumulated enough such that if, let's use an example, you're 40 years old and you've accumulated enough in your retirement accounts such that the growth of your retirement accounts by the time you would draw on them in a normal retirement age of, say, 65, would have enough money in them so that you do not need to contribute anything more at this time to be in a good position to retire at 65. And so that's a position that you can start to look at as a place of strength in a financial sense, is that if you're in a situation where you've saved enough for retirement now that, using good assumptions, a reasonable increase in the growth rate of whatever you're invested in for your retirement funds, and a reasonable rate of withdrawing it when you're in retirement, which goes back to knowing how much money you make, or more specifically, excuse me, how much money you spend, because you need to know how much you're drawing down. If you can find yourself in a situation where you don't need to contribute anymore and you're less than retirement age, you can potentially make a lifestyle adjustment at that point and potentially go after a job that maybe pays a little less but has a better balance of life. Maybe you can do something that you're really passionate about but doesn't necessarily pay the same as a different position. Or you can keep pushing forward in whatever you're in right now, or you can find opportunities to increase your income and get yourself to a position where you could retire earlier than the typical person. So that covers Coast Fi. It's basically you're coasting into the finish line. You've already got enough saved theoretically, and you're deciding whether or not it makes sense to make lifestyle change. So the next step to this is Barista Fire. And barista is the fancy word for folks who make coffee. And that has some tangential connections to Starbucks because of the concept of finding a job basically specifically for benefits. So Starbucks, Lowe's, Home Depot, off the top of my head, a handful of other basically big corporations will offer benefits, specifically healthcare, to part-time employees. And so Barista Fire is a position where you have enough money saved, you potentially have enough money to cover your expenses, but between the ages of whenever you're trying to early retire and 65, when you can set up Medicare, you need to have some sort of plan in place for your health insurance expenses. That's one of the holes in the financial independence movement in retiring early, is you need to figure out what to do about healthcare. Right now, there's not a good answer for it. And so Barista Fire is that answer for a decent segment of the financial independence community looking to retire early, finding some sort of a job that will give you access to health insurance, and basically working that job such that you can live the rest of your time on your own terms, and still be able to make sure that you're putting some space between you and some sort of medical emergency. So the next step into that, we're starting to head into the green, and that's Lean Fire. And so basically what that says is that you've got a nest egg established such that with a reasonable drawdown rate, you can cover your bare essential expenses. And so let's use an example. Your family's expenses are 60 grand a year. But you know that in a tightened up, lesser scenario, your expenses probably could be 40 grand a year if you cut some things out. There's a segment here of the financial independence community that places such a high value on being able to have their time back and going and traveling in a van, or just to be able to enjoy their time on nobody else's terms, that they have shrunken down their lifestyle such that they can retire early and maybe not have as glamorous of a retirement, but basically to be able to do it a couple of years earlier than they might have been able to earlier in a different scenario. And so Lean Fire is basically you've got your expenses cut out such that you've got enough money to cover yourself in the skinniest of lifestyles of yours. And so to take that a step further, FIRE in the financial independence retire early sense suggests that your typical expenses for the lifestyle that you want to live is such that you can have a safe withdrawal rate, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4%, depending on what you subscribe to there. And if you pull that amount of money, and so the easy math example to that is you've got $1 million in your portfolio. You pull 4% from it, that gives you $40,000, and that's a scenario there. And obviously, these numbers can adjust up or down based on your lifestyle, but that's the step in the personal wealth spectrum that you're looking for in a traditional sense. That is your prime green of this traffic light, if you will. And then one step beyond that is Fat Fire. You've done really well for yourself. You've got enough of a nest egg such that your safe withdrawal rate is in excess of what you typically spend as a lifestyle. and you can start to spend more, or you can start to give outrageously, or you can start to do things philanthropically. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, you've got yourself set up in a good place such that you can make those decisions. And so hopefully you can find where you are in this journey, and hopefully you can put together an action plan if you're interested in the aspect of retiring early, that you can put yourself a plan in place to get you from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen in potentially less time than maybe you even thought. I've seen studies that suggest that getting from zero net worth to FIRE can be achieved in as little as 10 years, as many as 20 years, and anywhere in between there. You know, results not typical, but the level of work that you put into it does have a proportionate effect to the level of outcome that you get out of it. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of the show. Hopefully you got something useful out of that, and hopefully you screen captured that graphic that can help you track where you are on your financial journey, and hopefully you can take some steps to propel yourself forward so that you can hit those milestones that you're looking for sooner rather than later. As always, you can subscribe to the channel to be the first to know about new content each and every week. You can hit the notification bell as well. And you can leave me a comment down below letting me know if you got any value from this video, or if you can move your camera like I can. That's really messing me up right now because I totally lost my train of thought. That's okay. If you are looking to sell your house in the Indianapolis market, I promise I won't move the camera when we're taking professional photos of your house. We'll make sure you get top dollar for it. You can get in touch with me in the comments or at indiedwell.com. Until next time, this is Anthony Drew Gary, host of The How To Show, signing off.